I'm back with another reaction video, and in this case, I don't really know why I'm going to be talking about this video. I don't know why I'm reacting, but I was sent a message from somebody in the community who said, you should react to this. This would definitely be something it'd be up your alley to react to, so I guess we're going to do it and see what this is even about, because on the surface, yes, I'm a video editor. I've also done graphic design and that sort of stuff, so breaking up with Adobe is a topic that I am familiar with because I have myself broken up with Adobe years ago. But yeah, let's jump into it.
I had finally snapped. My brain was on fire. I was having an aneurysm, an out-of-body experience.
Okay, first of all, this is the first time I've seen this this channel, and this is crazy. This is a gnarly visual style, and I am very impressed by this. This is really good looking, very cool, and kind of disturbing in a way. But I'm going to turn off the subtitles because I don't want to like see what's going to be said and then kind of spoil it. So let's restart. Not restart, but you know.
Watching myself, shaking and desperate and screaming. Why are you doing this to me? Adobe had just corrupted my file again. 2 days of my best work down the drain, and so I poured every drop of my secret, simmering resentment into a work of video art. Breaking up with Adobe.
Okay, so I've had that experience, and I lost a lot of work because of Adobe crashing and corrupting files. I understand that pain. But I just gotta say again, this is such a good style, visual style. Like, he's an animator, obviously, but there's this is very impressive. And if you're breaking up with Adobe, and because that could be a lot of stuff, I assume it's a video editor and an animator, so that's gonna be a lot to break up with. So you're gonna just find another video editing software. DaVinci Resolve is what I use, but that's interesting to switch to because you're going to have to change a lot of your workflow in order to have such a unique visual style. Also, the way he speaks is not obviously not the auto-tune part of it. I'm talking about just the way he speaks with his mouth and his teeth showing at all times. You probably have to train yourself to do that.
It was viewed 6 million times across the internet. It resonated. People were tired of their own codependent relationships with their once beloved software. And yet there I was, still crawling back like a schmuck, night after night, hoping this time would be different. But then one night I watched a tutorial on DaVinci Resolve and something changed in me. I dared to dream. So I built up the courage, packed my bags, and said, listen up, toots. You and me, we're done. I'm making this next project without you. This was a terrible idea.
This is so good. This is so good. The effort on his, even his A-roll is so impressively done. Like, it makes me feel like I have put very little effort into all of my content. And I've put a ton of effort into my content, especially like This Week in Linux, where every week I spend 20 plus hours just creating a video about the news of Linux. And yeah, I don't do any visual elements like this, but it's a lot of work. And now I feel like it's it's lazy in comparison to this. This is so good. All right.
See, I got decades of experience with Adobe software, and now I was stuck rebuilding my VFX pipeline from scratch. Everything was annoying, and I kept getting stuck.
That's what I was thinking, because you're switching from Adobe After Effects or Premiere to DaVinci Resolve, and for those who don't know, DaVinci Resolve uses nodes in terms of how it handles everything, and After Effects and Premiere are like a layer system and like tracks. So you do stuff on layers, and nodes and layers are kind of the same, except nodes don't have any particular placement. You can put them anywhere as long as you connect it in the right order. So nodes are actually the best way to do this kind of like visual effects and that sort of, because you have so much more flexibility and so much more power, but they are also very annoying to get started with. they're so annoying. When I first started using, there was not Fusion because that's DaVinci stuff, but there's Nuke. I think Nuke was the first time I saw the node approach, and then also Natron later on. It was definitely something to get used to, and with Resolve, if you're not familiar with nodes and you get into nodes, it's basically a completely different experience. But in my opinion, I think this node system of Resolve is probably the best I've used. And I think that it's actually better for me. But I'm nowhere near as good as this guy, obviously.
Most basic stuff. I felt so lonely. The key difference from using After Effects is that DaVinci Resolve uses a system known as node compositing. The video signal is loaded from the initial node that flow into other nodes which distort and filter the signal. You can split the signal into multiple streams, alter them, and then recombine them before it all flows into the final output composite.
That's cool. He's like showing how flexible you can do it. Like the whole splitting with the layer system, it's like whatever stacks on top of each other, that's what it's going to look like. This one is like you can kind of create multiple like functionalities, multiple flexible stuff. So like different paths and different branches. And then you can choose to not use certain pieces and then just take it out of the connection. And then you have so much more power with Node. So I'm impressed by this. But did his shirt have effects on it?
And then recombine them before it all flows into the final output composite. I really started to see the benefits of this new workflow. It feels less like you're just stacking these prefab effects and more like you're building your own custom machines. Build them once and then reuse them endlessly. You can group your machine into a single node, remove any unneeded parameters, and you've essentially made your own friggin' plugin. And there's a whole community of people who make their own and then they share them with each other.
And you can store them in a project and just reuse them in that. You can also store them inside of the effects panel. So if you want to create your own plugins, you can put them in the effects section. So you can just pull it from there rather than having them in the project. You can actually store them in effectively the UI of the Resolve system. So it's very flexible in that sense too.
The information in the sound, color, and editing pages, and I got nothing to say about it except it's just good. I'm getting a bit emotional right now.
This is so good. The Resolve stuff, I agree. The sound editing, the motion graphic stuff, it's all connected, and you can go back and forth. You can actually create plugins that you can have some simple sliders to make adjustments, but if you want to go into like the complex stuff, you can then open the Fusion page from the plugin directly into the plugin's functions and structure. And you can also get plugins from other people and then see how they built it by going into the Fusion page of that plugin. Like there's so many cool things about Resolve. But like this dude, this is such a good presentation style. I'm not going to copy it because that would be lame, but I wish I thought of it. It feels like a comic book sort of approach but also is very stylized. I mean, it's so good.
Another big component of my work is the sound design, and while Resolve's built-in DAW is probably capable for most people's video editing needs, I'll show you what I use to get just that little bit of extra pizzazz.
This is so good, man. I'm sorry I keep pausing it just to say it's so good. It's just that good, and it's just crazy because I think that the sound system or the sound page in DaVinci Resolve is great, but I'm not really a sound audio engineer to give a full judgment. So it's probably not as good. But also Reaper is fantastic, and it's been around for a very long time, and it's considered production or like professional level quality. And I know a lot of people who've used Reaper and said that it's like the best. The UI of Reaper isn't typically said it to be the best, but functionality wise, very cool. So combining Reaper and Resolve would be a good choice.
Reaper, created by the guy that did Winamp. It reminds me of a time when companies used to take pride in their software. It's homely, and I know it doesn't look like much at first, but when you get a little more acquainted, oh baby. It's extremely customizable. All of these context-aware cursor tools can be changed. The layout restructured, reskinned, endless script.
I didn't know it had context-aware cursor tools. That's interesting. Okay, I need to play with Reaper more.
The community have written lets you change the finest detail exactly as you want it. I have it set up so that when I rename a track, it automatically recolors and applies the correct settings. But get a load of this. This dude made a tool that lets you record video direct to the timeline. Then you can edit it in Reaper. It's like how you record takes to a song, and then you can export non-destructively into Resolve. How could you not fall in love with that?
That's pretty awesome. I'm not editing video in Reaper. It makes sense that you could do it, but that seems now I have to try this because I've only played with Reaper on like a little bit. I'm very little, but that would be very cool. But it's not, obviously it's not going to be the best experience, but you can like do the basic cuts and stuff like that. But to be able to export to EDL files, because he shows export, I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure where this is.
Reaper, it's like how you record takes to a song, and then you can export.
Yeah, see, it says EDL files. So EDL files are what is used for markers in and also other stuff inside of Resolve. So I use EDL files every time I do a show or any kind of video recording. I make notes for edits and stuff like that inside of EDL files so that you can just export directly from Reaper and then be able to put that into Resolve is crazy, because I wonder how much detail can you use with the EDL file? Can like you do the edits and then have those edits be done already? That would be crazy. I have to try this.
So for the last few months, I've also been using Affinity Photo, Toon Boom Harmony, Unreal Engine, FL Studio, Clip Studio Paint, and I love each and every one of them. But I'll tell you a secret. I had ulterior motives for breaking up with Adobe.
Oh, interesting. Okay. We're going to get to the ulterior motives in a second. But he mentioned a lot of applications. I've used some of them because they're pretty cool. I've used Affinity Photo, very nice. FL Studio is very nice. And it used to be called Fruity Loops. And I've used some other ones. But most of those I don't use because they're not Linux compatible. But for the most part, the ones I have used, that are good. And I wish some of them, like Affinity Photo, I wish it had support for Linux. That'd be awesome.
For years now, I've been infatuated with Linux.
Okay, so that's why someone wanted me to review this or do a reaction to this. Definitely. That's why. That would be... Okay, I thought it was because I did video editing and graphics works and Adobe stuff and all that, but no, it's not that. It's the fact that he's infatuated with Linux, apparently. So, yeah, this is going to be fun. He's chosen Mint. It's a good choice. All right. Overall rating, 75%. Okay. The category and the different O and U, we'll get to it probably.
Ending my reliance on Adobe finally gave me the confidence to start experimenting with a new operating system, and I was determined to learn about the terminal, Flatpaks, and of course, Fisk.
And of course, Fisk. Why? Just for the lulz, I suppose. Fisk is file system check. I don't know why you would be so, of course about that.
Something that I didn't quite grasp about Linux early on, but I've come to really love and appreciate about it, is that it's built for you to customize and really make your own. So you might think that there's missing features in the sound panel, Well, it's designed for you to install whatever sound panel you want. And people have made heaps of them. It's basic for a reason, and that's to give you a solid, lightweight base for you to build on top of. A popular distro is Linux Mint, and when I first used it I thought, I like the taskbar, I like the way the panels snap, I like the way it feels like Windows. Thing that I didn't quite grasp about Linux early on, but I've come to really love and appreciate about it, is that it's built for you to customize and really make your own. So
That's true. It is very much customizable. It's not really made for that necessarily. Like you have to do that, but you can do that for sure. So there's a lot of things that out of the box you might not have, like you might be expecting and you not have it, but there's definitely typically options for it. But for the most part, you don't have to customize it. But if you want to, there you can go crazy with customization if you want.
you might think that there's missing features in the sound panel. Well, it's designed for you to install whatever sound panel you want, and people have made heaps of them. It's basic for a reason, and that's to give you a solid, lightweight base for you to build on top of.
Yeah, I would say that that's a pretty accurate way to describe it. I mean, you don't have to do the building, but if you wanted to, like apparently this guy definitely is going into some very specific use case kind of things. Yeah, it's probably perfect for him.
A popular distro is Linux Mint, and when I first used it I thought, I like the taskbar, I like the way the panels snap, I like the way it feels like Windows. But even all that stuff, it's just a pre-installed graphical user interface called Cinnamon, which is installed on top of Mint.
I mean, also they make Cinnamon, so yes, you're correct. But Mint is the people who make Cinnamon, so it is very like specific to their use case. But for the most part, what he's saying is true in general. Like, it's just a desktop on top of a distro on top of the kernel. Although base kernel GNU/Linux is not correct. The kernel itself is Linux, and then there's utilities on top of the kernel that would be like GNU utils and that sort of stuff. But I mean, I'm not going to be judging his opinion of Linux in that sense because this is something that there's so many complicated aspects of Linux to learn. If you really wanted to dive in like I did, most people don't need to do that and arguably probably shouldn't.
You can change it to something else. You can make it feel like Mac OS, or have no user interface, or some interface that looks like something that you've never even seen before. And it feels so snappy. Why is it so slow on Windows to load a folder full of WAV files? And why does file search still suck? I used it on my friend's Mac OS, and it was instant. That was 20 years ago.
Okay, so I'm going to bleep this for sure, but this is funny because Mac OS is a cousin of Linux, and that could be why it's faster. It's definitely different in a lot of ways, but also it's very similar in many ways as well.
I love that Linux isn't giving me recommendations or pop-ups or trying to steal my It just leaves me alone.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the main things about Linux is that it is it's not going to annoy you with pop-ups all the time. There are some times where you can, like, for example, Zorin OS, they will ask you to pay for the pro version, or with Elementary OS, the store has options to pay for stuff, and it will give you notifications that you can when you do updates and that sort of thing. So there are some examples of that in a tiny amount, but not in a way that actually is irritating. It's not going to be taking your data or any of that stuff. It's Linux is designed for the idea of the user should control their system. I know, crazy novel idea, but
don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of headaches. And getting everything up and running is not exactly a wank in the park. But a few years ago, you couldn't even run games on Linux. Now most of them run fine. It's just such a good time to jump on board, and things are getting more compatible as time goes on. Thanks, Gabe. But the thing I like most about Linux is that despite the headaches trying to get everything to run, there's a real sense of passion and optimism in the community.
That's true. Yes. As you can tell, I'm making this video about someone who is just trying Linux. Well, although I didn't know it was in the first place. But there are many good points that he's made so far. That one thing I would say is that Valve is definitely the reason why gaming on Linux has improved greatly, but support for other stuff is not necessarily Valve specific. The Wine team have done tons of work for years prior to Valve. And yes, Valve has contributed to that effort. I think there's, I think it's also probably just making a joke about like thanks Gabe, that sort of stuff. But I just wanted to make it clear. It's not just Valve making these improvements and stuff. It's a collective effort between Valve and like code weavers, and also Red Hat does stuff like that because he showed the cool stuff about Pipewire, being able to pipe things back and forth between different sound devices and that sort of stuff. There's a lot of effort that makes this platform as awesome as it is.
It feels like technology made by humans for humans brings a friggin' tear to my eye. It reminds me of when I was just first getting into computers and all the things you could learn. Made me realize how much I've missed that sense of passion and optimism about tinkering around with technology. Yeah. I'd really recommend just installing Linux Mint to a USB stick, running it off that if you want to try it out. Don't worry, homie. You won't break anything. So everybody's been...
That also seems very like nefarious, like the way he's saying that he won't break anything. And then that, like, this style, while very cool, does kind of give a little bit of an evil vibe when he said that. I don't know why, but it's a little bit of an evil vibe. Because it's like, yeah, if you install it to a USB stick and you just run it off that just to kind of play with it and try it out, you won't break anything, probably, depending on what you do. I mean, I'm not going to guarantee that because some people could still do bad things to their system if you do the wrong thing, but you're not likely to. Like 98% unlikely to do anything bad to it, especially if you don't install it to the drive. If you do want to install it to the drive, I would recommend a variety of different ways. Maybe I should do a video on that as well.
Been dunking on Adobe and Microsoft lately. I think that both companies have become a symbol of just the general hatred that we all have towards big tech. But clearly for them, they don't give a shit how much we hate them. It's about whether you decide to leave.
Yeah, that's true. They don't care how much you hate them as long as you buy their stuff. I left Adobe. I don't think they care that I left Adobe either, but because it was years ago. But at the same time, actually, I think I left Microsoft before I left Adobe because it was hard to find alternatives that were good enough. And then I finally did find one, and it was such a relief. I felt so great saying bye to Adobe. Like, I didn't make a video on it, but I probably should have.
A lot of people would like to make a switch, but it can be pretty hard. I get it. It costs time, energy, lost revenue, and they don't make it easy for you to just pack up and bail. It's simply much more convenient to stay with them. But I've got a little public service announcement about the true cost of staying in your convenient big tech relationship. The technologies we use become...
This is so good. This guy is so good at this style. Like, it's such a cool style. Like, I don't know. It's just
an extension of us, interwoven into our workflows, industry, infrastructure, and meshed with the fabric of our culture and society. It's how we spend our time and interface with reality. There is a brazen, perverse business culture permeating big tech that's not to deliver a quality product or solution, but to soothe, trap, and coerce you, to make you reliant, addicted, and dependent. Then they lobby, change the political landscape to their favor, to capitalize on the problems that they've fermented. The world is spiraling at the whims of a perpetual motion profit machine, a sick competition of power-hungry addicts out to brainwash you, drain your blood, then smash your molecules into shareholder profit. Brace yourselves! Truth bomb incoming! It's up to you now to stand up and do something about it. Take action now.
Okay, I needed to take a break from that. That's intense. That is so intense. So the majority of what he's saying, like, the big tech is notorious for taking your data and not protecting it very well either, but definitely taking your data. So, and they don't care about your privacy. Yeah, that's been proven many times, obviously, because they're taking the data and then who knows what they're doing with it. And it's not like they're taking like anonymous data. They're taking like personal private data, like 100% that has been shown. I'm not saying that Adobe is doing that, but the fact that they have it in their like EULA that says, like the last time I checked, this could be changed, but I saw something along the lines of like, you give them rights to use your work in basically whatever they want. And someone came out from Adobe said, like, well, we didn't say that it was for training our AI, but you didn't not say that. You know, you said it's just, you know, you could use it for. So I don't know. This is intense, but also the state of tech. The big tech companies, most of them are not doing what's good for their users.
Value your privacy. Find ethical alternatives built by people who are not out to you over. Because taking back control of our tools is one defense against the system they're assembling. The oligarchs of big tech are descending on you, cementing their monopolies and rocking that. We have this window to act while we can, because the stakes aren't just about a banal feature or a subscription payment. It's about preserving a relationship with technology that's made for us.
I completely agree. Like that part, it's about preserving technology for the value of people. You know, that's like one of the things that about Linux and open source as a whole, making it possible for people to use stuff without having the hindrance of, I mean, sure, there's also subscriptions and stuff like that. That's also irritating, but just not being restricted in what you can do and how you can do it and all that sort of stuff. That's the concept of open source. And to a point, Linux as well. So I think the video is very good. The style is really cool. And I learned some stuff about Reaper. But he talks about switching to certain types of applications that I don't think work on Linux. So I'm very curious if he switched to Linux, what he's doing to make those work. Like Affinity Photo, I don't think works on Linux. Maybe you could do it inside of bottles. I've never tried to do that. He does show bottles in the video. So maybe that's the solution. Now I'm curious if I can get that to work inside of bottles and the other ones too, because some of these I don't know if they work on Linux. Yeah, maybe that's the solution. Maybe he did kind of show it, but he didn't talk about it specifically. So I would have preferred that to be listed in the video. But now I guess I have to go try that stuff in bottles, and we'll find out. So this guy is very intense. And I think that a lot of the stuff he's saying has merit. And I love the fact that, first, I love his style. Like, that's just very cool looking. And as far as the visuals, the constantly intense presentation might get a little bit bothersome at some point. But I do think that this was like very cool video, very like cool style. And this point about privacy being important and technology being there for the user is a very, I completely agree with that. And on my podcast, Destination Linux, we talk about these kinds of things, like privacy and security concerns and stuff like that. And there's been some examples of companies doing things with your data properly, as in like they only do anonymous data, or they only do what you give them and they don't try to take stuff from you. But that's very rare. That's a very small number of companies in the grand scape of businesses, especially big tech. Big tech is not known for treating their users with respect. And so I agree with that aspect of this video completely. And I wish that wasn't true. But another good example, another good reason to use Linux is that Linux respects the users. And all the companies that build Linux operating systems do respect the user. Now, I can't say that for every Linux distro, because sometimes these Linux distros are made by random people in random places. So who knows for all Linux? I wouldn't say that because Linux technically is like an umbrella term that describes anything that is using the Linux kernel as the base. So that could be like technically Android is a Linux-based distribution. It's not a mainstream Linux distro that you would refer to and like the overall ecosystem scope, but it is technically based on Linux. So you could call it that. And, there's that sort of stuff. But for the most part, if you're using any of the mainstream distributions like Ubuntu or Fedora or like SUSE or anything based on those, you're going to have a fine experience. Even some based on Arch, you'll have a pretty good experience in the scope of privacy and security and all that. As far as like beginners, though, stick to something that's Ubuntu based. I made a video about this specifically, which you can check out here, where I'm talking about like how to get started. What's your first distro and what that should be? And I think that's a good way to start. Something basically Ubuntu based, but I go into much more depth here. So check that out.